To start with you, you have known Charlie Kirk since you were not even a teenager.
I have, and this is absolutely a very, very tragic day. My heart hurts because I lost a friend, but my heart hurts even more for our country because it lost one of its greatest patriots. This is a guy who, some on the left are seeking to paint as divisive, but he sought to be anything but that. He sought to actually bring about discourse, bring about discussion. He wanted people to challenge his beliefs, debate him, prove him wrong, he would even say. And for his life to be taken away for simply having the audacity to be passionate and to care about our country, to love his God, to love his family is despicable. And I think that it is very, very scary that we live in a country today where there is now a bullseye on the back of every conservative who dares to say that maybe they support Donald Trump. Maybe they love America and they think it's a great country. It's a shame to see that. And hopefully we can right this wrong in some way, but his legacy will endure, and I think it'll last forever.
Or I'll add to that, they believe in biology and science.
Victor Davis Hanson, I want to come to you and get your thoughts on what happened today and the impact that this is going to have on speech moving forward. I talked about the left. They attack Charlie Kirk. They would criticize the things that he would say. All he wanted to do was have a conversation and an open dialogue. He believed in free speech. He believed in the fact that conservatives shouldn't be silenced. Yet being assassinated is the ultimate silence. So as we think about the two sides trying to forge a path forward that is not paved in more violence, how do you get that dialogue going when there is so much vitriol out there?
It's very difficult. Charlie, whom I knew and really liked and respected, was one of the few people who really would go anywhere to engage in a polite and reasonable conversation with people he didn't agree with. And we kind of crossed a Rubicon here. In the United States, we really don't see this very often. We see it in Europe, we see it in Latin America, where people, Charlie was also a journalist and a media person, and we don't see the assassination of journalists here as much as we've had it occasionally, but this is very different. And then it's also, it takes place with the Scalise shootings that we saw, the two attempts on Donald Trump's life, the canonization of Luigi Mangione, taking out a United Healthcare executive. So there's a sense that certain people on the left feel that they have a moral right, or they can use any means necessary to affect political change or change the media narrative. And that's very dangerous. You see the reaction to these things that happened. Luigi Mangione was made a hero. People on the internet wish that Donald Trump had been hit. One poll had 30% of Democrats polling that they felt that it was unfortunate that he had not been hit seriously. And then you have the lowering of the bar. We have people who talk about fascism, 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 the new republic with a picture of Donald Trump's as Hitler. And when that message gets out, that your political opponent is not just conservative, but he's a fascist, he's Hitler, he's Mussolini, then it draws people out of the woodwork that says, well, if that's true, I can be an iconic figure for eliminating that existential threat. And yet, no one really speaks about this. And we've seen people on the floor of the Congress spew racial hatred. We see it on The View. We see it all through our society. And anybody who speaks up against it says, well, you're this or this or that. Mm-hmm. So I think we've really got to stop canonizing the hatred and start holding people to account for what they say. And I think we're in a very dangerous period where certain people on the left feel that it's going to be politically useful to marginalize or take out or neutralize journalists and political activists. Charlie Kirk was probably the most influential person under 35 in the conservative movement. He did heroic work in the 2024 election. He had a way of captivating the nation's youth, and now he's gone like that. It's tragic, but it's also evil, and I don't think you can replace somebody like that.
Victor, and I just want to stay with you for a second. It's a biblical evil,
Yes.
which
Absolutely.
Charlie understood very clearly. But you're not only a great thinker, you're a historian. Based on history, where do we go? Because this is a new age. I'm looking online. I see the rhetoric, the vile rhetoric on Blue Sky. On X, worse on Blue Sky. But I also see in the mainstream media how they're framing the assassination of Charlie Kirk and Charlie's legacy. Also vile, also just full of lies. And so we can sit here and talk about toning down the rhetoric, but we'll talk and they'll ignore what we say.
Well, I think there has to be consequences. And when you hear somebody on The View say that the election is due to uneducated white women, or you hear the rantings of crazy person, pure racism by Joy Reid or Jasmine Crockett, or you see the cheering and the celebration of the death of a United Healthcare executive and the canonization of Luigi Mangione, or Miss Taylor interviewing him and gaga over him, or you see the Sarnoff mass killer on the front page of Rolling Stone with a photogenic image, then I think all of us can't be complacent anymore. We have to stand up each according to our station and say, you people are not going to do that. We're going to challenge you every moment you say something. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to get down to your level. We're not going to use violence. We're not going to use ad hominem assaults. We're just going to say that what you're doing is destructive, and we're going to try to stop it. And I think we haven't been doing that.
CJ,
We haven't.
a lot of people are going to be looking for accountability, especially in the wake of the 2 attempts on the president's life when he was running for president. And Dagan had mentioned this is, really strange timing because Ryan Ruth is on trial in Florida. It's such a strange trial. He's defending himself. It draws to the focus in the forefront mental health issues as well, and how they may play a role here. We don't know anything about the suspect in custody so far, but I imagine that people are getting sick of this, and they're going to be looking for some sort of accountability. The bullet that hit the president in the ear in Butler, Pennsylvania, that person died that day. We never understood why, what happened, where exactly that threat came from. I think people are going to want to try to understand why this is happening, and for people to see that there are consequences, which it sounds like law enforcement, the DOJ, FBI is very, very serious about.
And rightfully so. And I think that people do want to understand what happened here, but let's also be clear what we do know happened here, right? We saw a person who had their life taken away because of the political speech that they were exercising. And, it used to be the left would call this hyperbole when folks on the right would say the left wants us dead. I don't think it's hyperbole anymore. This is now a repeated pattern of demonstrated behavior of violence, whether it's the 2 assassination attempts against our president, whether it's now the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This is who they are. And when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And thank God we have leadership like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi with the DOJ, who I think will chase this down. But we need answers, and we need them very quickly.
Who is going to carry the mantle, Victor, for Charlie, for the movement, for young people? Because I want to point out, like this image that we're looking at here, a lot of the video that we've been showing, that shot there, that's today. That was right before Charlie was gunned down and right before his life was taken. In all of his experiences, he knew that in a crowd like that, there was danger of all the times that he had encountered it before. But he was still there, still full of joy and hope and faith and ready to debate and take on people who had questions. But who's going to do that now?
I don't see anybody. I think every time I talked to him, I was amazed that he had administrative ability. He organized a huge organization. He got people to vote. He debated people who didn't agree with him. He mobilized young people who had never voted before. He was charismatic. He was well-spoken. He wasn't a product of the elite university system. So he had a grassroots appeal to people. And he was a genius as far as that. I don't see anybody on the scene. I think that's why he was targeted. I think people thought he'll be irreplaceable, and the people who hated him and everybody with him and what he stood for killed him for that reason. I would just say that I do think that given what we saw on the Charlotte subway and that brutal execution of that beautiful young girl, and we saw the Auburn professor, and we saw the Scalise. I think people are sick of the mental health thing. I'm not trying to deprecate that people have mental health problems, but I don't think that matters in a way that it did before all of these things. It's almost as if people are going to shoot somebody and then say, well, mental health or the homeless. And you could see that with the mayor of Charlotte. The first thing she said was, let's not demonize people who are homeless or mental health. And that's not I think we need to get back into, there is such a thing as evil, and it doesn't do the dead any good, or the people who love the dead or who are absent really in life without them, to be told that the person had a mental problem that killed your husband or your daughter. That may be true, but I'm not suggesting we go back to some type of medieval treatment of the homeless, but we've gone way too far in this therapeutic culture and tried to explain, contextualize, defend, rationalize evil. And until we stop that, it's going to continue. There is such a thing as deterrence, and people act one way if they think they can get away with it, whether they claim they're mentally ill or not, and quite another when they think that punishment is going to be swift and total.
Well, I'd just point out before Jackie picks this up, John Hinckley, who shot President Reagan, he's on the street. He's a free man. He got out of the institution in which he was being treated because he's fully sane, rehabilitated. He's out living his life. So I'll just leave you with that. No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, absolutely. CJ, I want to come back to you. Jackie Heinrich was reporting from the White House, and she said that she had inquired from the Secret Service whether they're changing their protocols with respect to protecting President Trump. She said that they said they don't comment on specifics, but they do adjust after an event like this. And I imagine that you would have to in this environment. You know, Charlie Kirk was a speaker for the movement, and he had so much influence and so much power, and everybody knows that he had a very close relationship with Donald Trump and that he was influential in helping him get reelected. And so, you know, if you're the president tonight, what are you thinking? I mean, we know what he said about Charlie, that he's a patriot, but what do you think he's thinking about himself, the party, those closest to him?
He's probably thinking about a lot of the same things he thought about after Butler, Pennsylvania. And I'll tell you what a lot of conservative influencers, young conservative influencers, are thinking as well. I've gotten many texts from many friends who are in this movement who are like, you know, can I go out anymore onto these campuses without a full security detail? Can I go out and do these speeches? And my message to them has been simple. This is exactly what the left wanted to do. They want us to be fearful. They want us to retreat. They want us to not be vocal and to go reach America's young people where they are. And I think if we're really going to live out Charlie's legacy and to make sure that his death was not in vain, we owe it to ourselves to continue the work. Of course, we have to be safe. We have to make those precautions. But what I think we ought to do too is take action to declare that it's a hate crime when you target people for their political affiliation or their beliefs, and to throw the full force of the government against them when they choose to do so. And I think we'll actually probably see a little bit of deterrence, as Dr. Hanson said. That is what we need here, because if we do not, I think resoundingly respond to this act of violence, we'll continue to see copycat incidents just like this happen all across the country.
There's a death penalty in Utah. Victor, before we go really quickly, some final words.
I think the Democratic and the left-wing movement, they have a responsibility. It doesn't do any good for this House Minority Leader to show up with a baseball bat, or House members to issue videos where they're kickboxing and punching at somebody. And all of that, I'm going to take a gun to a knife fight, and we're not going to use pencils, we're going to use knives. All of that rhetoric is shrill, and it appeals to certain people that it shouldn't appeal to.
Yeah.
And the left and the Democratic Party have been utterly irresponsible and dangerous. That's the truth. Sorry, it is.
Victor Davis Hanson and C.J. Pearson, thank you both so much. Jackie, thank you so much for being